Stuart Dew, thanks for joining us, affectionately known as Stevie.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Brad.
Where'd Stevie come from?
Stevie come from my first day at Hawthorn, actually. First official day. I was walking through the change rooms and Mark Williams, clearly the footy nut that he is, walked up to me and said, "Oh, g'day, Stevie. Welcome to the club." And as with those things, you look around and hope no one heard it, but unfortunately, a couple of people did.
It's stuck, that's for sure. Mate, you've got one of the more unique and remarkable football journeys.
I'm not sure about that, but it's a little bit different, but everyone's pretty different, aren't they, I suppose, if you have a deeper look.
Yeah, they certainly are. Beginning with the Port Adelaide, of course, the inaugural team. Long time ago now.
Yeah, long time. It was funny. I still remember the day. Alan Stewart was the head recruiter there, so he was my local club, Central Districts, going back a bit further. He was the ex-senior coach there, so I knew his family, and when he informed me that they were going to take me as the 17-year-old, it was an interesting time because Central Districts in South Australia were rivals with Port Adelaide, so Dad wasn't too happy, but I think he got his head around it eventually. But yeah, 1 minute you're in the league, you're thinking about it, and then next minute you're rolling into training, and Gavin Wanganeen's there, and at that stage, Matthew Primus and Scott Cummings, he was there, so guys you watch on TV, so it's a bit of a fantasy.
Those first few years at Port Adelaide, multiple sort of minor premiers and then ultimately premiers.
Yeah.
Some phenomenal names rolled around in those sides.
Yeah, we had a solid team, really. Probably guys like myself sort of rode on the coattails a little bit of some other people's careers. Certainly Warren Treadwell up front made us look good by marking everything. But, we were really solid. We just had balance everywhere. And I don't think we had a weakness. I think it was everyone chipped in, and we didn't really have that dominant midfielder. I think that helped. Like when I think about it, Josh Franco for a little bit there was, I think he come third and second in the Brownlow, but the midfield just had great depth, and if one had a quiet day, 2 or 3 would step up. So, when you look at the Brisbane team, we weren't as good as them in terms of the midfield, but very similar in that you couldn't shut down the whole lot. So forwards always got good supply. Defence always stood up.
And from the outside looking in, it was a side that certainly wasn't short on confidence. Big personalities.
Yeah, I suppose with like all successful teams, you have that feeling of, you could be 5 goals down with 6 minutes to go and still think you can win it, and almost surprised when you don't. So there's a fine line between the confidence and arrogance of teams, and I think we probably walked that line a little bit. Took our medicine by some really bad finals losses, and haven't really got fond memories of that. But then to get there in 2004 was really relief. I think it's life changing for a lot of people in that team. I think you think about if you failed again as that team, we probably would have needed to disband the team a fair bit to change the mix. Almost think, well, gee, it's not going to happen for this group.
So you almost become so scarred.
There was 1 year, I think we were 3 games clear on top, and we lost 2 home finals to teams we should have won against. Full credit to them. Got the job done at the time. I'm not a believer in people steal finals or steal premierships. I think whoever wins in the 2 hours, they deserve it. So no point talking about what could have happened, but I certainly think if that was the 4th year where we bombed out, 2001 was one where it doesn't get talked about as much as 02, 03, but Hawthorn, our old team, I think we were 17 points up at 3/4 time, and I think Johnny Barker kicked a couple from the impossible, shocking inside-out kicks. Just doesn't happen there, but it did. So I think that's the one that got away, because then you get into the, a prelim against Essendon at that point, who we had a good record against, and and that was Brisbane's first flag. So, see, now I'm starting to talk about what ifs. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting. I still, you know, you think about it. You think about those things, and
even still now.
Oh, every now and then, you know, you just sit and you feel like you're underachieved.
Yeah.
And that's not being ungrateful for 04, but certainly for the other years, you feel like you know, maybe we did take it for granted at the time, and that cost us. So
we'll sort of jump around a little bit here, but of course, you know, you had some time off Hawthorn and then Sydney as an assistant coach. So following on from that theme, do you feel like Sydney underachieved during that period from what your 2010 you begun as development coach, and obviously finished up in 16?
17, end of 17. I certainly think again, you look at it and think just one more flag, and it's not being greedy, but the list was pretty impressive, and certainly probably the list in 14 was on paper maybe better than 12.
Yep.
But again, I think it shows that it's actually more about the commitment of the 22 rather than the list on paper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2012, the mix was right, and it was a different mix. You know, you got Mitch Morton coming in out of absolutely nowhere, but it was one of those ones when you're talking in match committee, it's like, geez, Mitch Morton might kick us a couple when we need it.
Yeah.
And he did. You know,
he ended up 3, was it?
And that I ticked 2 and set up Kieran Jack, I think. So it just went to script. And I think, you know, for a little bit there, Sydney wouldn't. I can say we, I guess, at the time. You know, we will always get nervous when teams got out to 3 or 4 goals because we weren't a heavily scoring side. And I think you guys got out to a reasonable lead there, but in the second quarter they just bounced. I think kicked 6 goals. So you start getting nervous. I think Gunston kicked the goal just before quarter time. It was like you're walking down the stairs and you're thinking, what look are you going to see on the players' faces? And sometimes you get a blank look, and other times you get this steely look, and thankfully they had that, you know, because sometimes you walk back up and go, geez, not today. And I reckon certainly felt that look in 2014 when obviously the Hawks come out breathing fire there.
So we'll sort of go back. You finished up at Port Adelaide, after, you know, a really, you know, successful career and a premiership and plenty of finals, and you just had enough of football. Yeah,
I always had this thought in my head. Well, 2 things: a one-team player, and also to go back to Central Districts, because that was my team that I followed as a young lad. My dad followed them from their inception in the 60s, so he came out from England, and that was his team. So I was sort of indoctrinated into that from an early age, and I actually lived in Port Adelaide Magpie zone, but my nana lived in Central zone.
Yeah.
So we put my address down as my nana's house so I could play for Central. Yeah. So you can't take that back now. But yeah, so I think it was an interesting time where I thought, I just don't want to play for another club. But it's probably, you know, it's immature in the end, really. Because I think I was probably mentally done at that club and should have actually looked elsewhere. But in the end, I was just about to gear up to play at Centrals, and I think Clarko got wind of it, made a call, and I sort of got off the phone. I thought, he can't be serious. He can't be serious.
What happened in that phone call? Because you'd had 12 months off, effectively.
I think at that time it was probably, I was working for Port Adelaide and doing some media work, much like yourself, not carrying out as accomplished as you, Brad. But I think I reckon it was July, August, and saw Clarko's phone number, picked it up. And he said, "Oh, are you going to play footy again?" I said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to play for Central Districts. I've got a bit of work to do, but That's where I'm going to go.
Yep.
Always said I would. And he said, what about the brown and gold? And I thought he was joking. I thought he was just ringing to see how I was going. And it sort of progressed. He said, anyway, I'll check in with you in a week and have a chat to the old man and see what he thinks. And it just snowballed from there, really. Like, I was a Hawthorn supporter when I was younger because John Platten originally came from Central, so a few things lined up. Obviously, Clarko, the Hawthorn, the fact I barracked for them. Andrew Russell was there, and a guy named Jeff Morris who was really instrumental in my career, I think, from Port Adelaide days. And Jeff was probably one that got on the phone and talking me through it as well. You know, almost saying, well, why not? You don't want to sit back and say, why don't I have a go and change? I think to grow up, it was good to get out of Adelaide and grow up.
So, I mean, those initial conversations began in August, did you say?
Yeah.
And then, I guess, effectively it wasn't until November,
draft.
Where Hawthorn ultimately drafted you. What happened during that period of time?
Well, initially, the first one, I flew over and met with Clarko again and Andrew Russell, and we actually went and did a 2K time trial. So
probably a forte of yours.
Probably sprung on me a little bit. Or 2.2 it was.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I think my PB, I don't know what, probably like 7:35 or 40. And I remember thinking, if I break 10 minutes here, I'm on my way. You know, because I hadn't exactly trained for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just really, it was like Clarko said, I don't care what you run. We just need a starting point and then we can set some goals. So Jack would probably be able to clarify. I think I was just under 9 or just over.
Yeah.
So I was wrapped. I'm thinking, it can't be that hard to knock off another minute and a half, you know, like I didn't think it was, I thought, I'm actually okay with that. You know, It's August, September, there's plenty of time. Round 1's not till March, so, but obviously there was a lot of work in between. I think I went riding with Clarko out Mount Macedon one day on Melbourne Cup Day. So he had 2 bikes strapped on his car.
So he picked you up
He's picked me up from the airport. He's got 2 bikes. I didn't know what I was doing. He said, just come in training gear. Walked out, as he does. He's got 2 bikes on the back. I thought, okay, we're going for a ride.
Yeah.
He's a nutty professor. And we're doing 110 down the freeway. And I just happened to, something caught my eye in the rear view, like my side mirror. I was in the passenger seat. And there was a bike bouncing along the highway. And he hadn't strapped it on properly. So, I'm losing it. Because he said it's Ross Smith's bike. So Jacker's bike's bouncing along the highway.
It's like Clarko strapped his bike.
He's strapped in, no dramas. Anyway, so he's pulled over. We've jogged down and it was totaled.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, it looks like we're not riding today. So anyway, we went to Mount Macedon and ran around for an hour and a half up and around Mount Macedon.
Yeah.
So I would have preferred the bike, to be honest. So
I'm surprised he didn't put you in the bike and just total along the car behind you.
I know. I thought there's got to be something coming. You know, he loves his curveball. So I did that maybe 3 or 4 times. I came over and just had a kicking session and just did some running. And I think it was just really, that first day was just to get a starting point and then put a plan in place with Jack. And Jeff was a massive help. I don't know if we'll get to it, but Jeff really, once I got to the club, you know, we'd do the normal training, and then Jeff and I'd go out to the 1,000 steps and cruise around there for 2 or 3 hours. But it was just it was an interesting time. You know, I think I got drafted on a Saturday, and I was actually working for Port on that day, so I think I was on a fishing charter hosting some people, and so I had no service on my phone. And the night before, I said to Clark, I said, well, can you guarantee that I'll get drafted? He said, well, I can't give you a guarantee, but I'll get it done. So, and obviously there was a clear argument on the day.
Yeah.
And I think I walked my nomination in sort of at 11:59 before the 12. You know, just because I just didn't want the circus.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought there's a lot of Clarko's going out on a whim here.
So
put his job on the line, really.
Well, effectively, yeah. And so, were you aware at the time that Clarko literally did sort of really had to... he stuck his neck out. He almost put his job on the line to get you over the line.
Yeah.
With the directors.
I probably didn't understand the level. Now, obviously, being in the coaching system, and certainly as a senior coach, I can imagine the conversations that would have been going on. You know, like... I'm surprised he got it through, to be honest. And it probably shows that when he wants something, he goes after it. But also for me, once he told me, he's like, "You've got my word, I'll get it done." I was pretty keen to repay the faith. And I think for him, pretty ballsy, really, because if let's say it doesn't work out, and I'm shocking, I'm no good in that first year, like, there's a chance to get sacked. You know, it's for a big call. You know, I don't know what pick, 40 odd or whatever. But that's a pretty big call for a list that, you know, made finals and was on the cusp. But he went out. He put his you know what's on the line.
Yeah. I mean, remarkably, the story could not have played out to script any better. Fast forward, 10, 11 months from that point in time.
Yeah. Well, he said to me, I reckon at one point in January, you know, I was coming along, and he just said, "Look, we don't need you to play every game. We just need you to play 15 games." And in the end, I played 15 games.
Oh, a knocker.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I think it was grand final week when just after the prelim, because, you know, the prelim, I think we were up by a fair bit. So I was just like, "Get me off the ground. I'm not doing a hammy in the last quarter. Like, get me off." And I remember, I think it might have been straight after, and I said, "Next week will be the 15th game." It's funny how things work out.
Was there ever a moment or a feeling that you had where he sort of looked at you and it just gave you you owe me kind of a moment?
Nah, I reckon, you know, the plan was not to play so early. I think I played some pre-season games. Yeah. And the plan, I sort of got to a position where I was probably in okay condition to play. And in the end, I think Jack and him and I, we're like, well, why do a training session? Might as well just use it as a training run and just see what happens. And in the end, started the season. And I think it was round 2, and I'd never done a hamstring. And late in the game, I got it in the middle of the ground, and I saw a big roughie about 75 away, and I thought I might be able to get it there, and my hammy just went snap. And I remember, I still, you know, because I hadn't done one, I actually just stretched thinking, is that like cramp? And then I thought, nah, and I just walked off. And that's when I thought, geez, this hasn't started well, you know. But luckily, you know, I think if the team weren't winning, there would have been more heat. Yeah. But I think because the team kept winning, did we win 9 or 10 or... Because the team kept winning, I was sort of this sideshow.
Yeah.
So, I was just like off to the side. But if we lost 2 in a row, I think the dialogue probably changes around this experiment of bringing me back.
What's your... And for all Hawthorn fans in particular, but the third quarter in the grand final, there's never been I don't think there's been a more influential sort of 5 to 10 minute period in a grand final by one player. What's your recollection of those moments?
Well, I remember thinking, when we're probably similar, I remember thinking if we can be close at half time, it's a bit like Federer getting in a 5th set, isn't it? Like it's not a normal spot for him.
Yeah.
So I thought if we can get close at half time, but it was a little bit about how the first half had gone. I think we were probably the least organised we'd been all year. I felt, you know, we hadn't got our defensive shape, but we were still in the game. Mm-hmm. You know, they'd missed a couple of easy ones just before half time, so I thought we're actually in all right shape here. If we can get a couple in the third, the doubts start creeping in. Plus, they'd won the year before, so maybe a couple start thinking, yeah, maybe today's not our day. But we had that, probably just a mix of hunger or, you know, even just young guys that weren't overawed by the occasion. You know, I think, what was Louis, maybe 22, roughly, and 21, 22.
Yeah.
They're just so excited. I remember running out through the banner because our whole theme was like, you know, I remember talking to Croft, I'm like, you've just got to lap up the day because this could be it. And particularly for him, like that was it.
That was it.
And he'd worked a lot harder than everyone else, but I remember coming through the banner and I saw your face. Your teeth were just looking back at me. And I just thought, how good's life? Like, I'm thinking, what was I doing this time last year? I was actually sitting in the grandstand before the Port Geelong game. But yeah, it was the recollection. I just think I always knew I was never going to get many touches. It was just had to be value for touches. But also going into the game, I thought, well, as a player, I really did underachieve with what I was given, I guess, in terms of talent. So I thought I got about 2 hours to actually reverse some of the damage I'd done in other years.
Yeah.
You know, when I sit back and go, gee, I should have been a better player. For sure, should have been a better player. But that's what, going into the game, I remember going to bed the night before thinking, well, if you have a good game tomorrow and we win, it actually changes my whole career. You know, I thought there's not many moments you get, because it's a grand final.
Yeah.
They're remembered more than the sort of 12 years you play.
Without that.
Because I had some absolute stinking games. You know, I remember one game Optus Oval, I think I had one touch. It's just embarrassing. You know, so I think it was real fear, but also like, geez, if this pulls off, like, you know, it's fairy tale stuff for all of us, you know.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, senior coach now yourself, how do you go about imparting those lessons and your learnings onto this young team you've got at the Gold Coast now? Yeah,
I mean, it's a bit of a buzz thing at the moment, isn't it? Storytelling, but you got to be. I'm certainly not at the front talking about myself. I think the time you get one-on-one is really crucial.
Yep.
And then you can assess where they're at, and you can weave in stories of others. You know, it doesn't always have to be about yourself. You know, I can, you know, even like your story, where you came from, rookie list. I quite often talk to, I guess, late draft picks and rookies around, go and pick any grand final team and how many guys come from the rookie list.
Yep.
And a lot of it's because of their attitude at the start of their career. So, whereas I was the only 17-year-old pick, so that was expected. And how was my attitude at the start of my career? It's totally different to what yours would have been. And that would have been why I underachieved. And someone like you and others get the absolute most out of their career.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of and I guess the journey I had of, you know, ups and downs and change of clubs, and, you know, I've always been, I guess, certainly my later part of my career, just grateful to the game. It's pretty good, isn't it? Like, we're sitting here, you get paid
pretty
to
lucky.
Talk about the game, watch the game, analyse, help people. Yeah. The best part of the job is telling someone they're playing, and the absolute worst part is telling someone they're out of the team. You know, I think that you can almost like physically sick when it gets to Thursday Arvos. But when you're looking at it from the outside, it doesn't seem that way. But so you try and balance it out.
What makes you the most uncomfortable? What's the most difficult aspect of being a senior coach?
I think delivering that news when people are out of the team.
Yeah.
Initially, I think that's the most uncomfortable you can get, because you know you're telling someone that right at that moment they're not good enough. Depending on the circumstances, you know, if it's a really clear one, I think it doesn't make it easier, but I think the conversation's easier. But if it's one that's line ball and you've probably made a call between one or two, if it's clear, I think, you know, that's bearable to a point. But when it's a line ball call and then you're almost thinking, you walk away thinking, gee, did I give enough clarity?
Yep.
Did I say it the right way? You know, where's his headspace at now? Is he going to bounce back? I think you're always just analysing those conversations, those one-on-ones when it's bad news. It's really easy to give the good news.
So I guess effectively you had an apprenticeship at Sydney.
Yeah.
For 7 or 8?
7 years. Yeah, I think the first year was development.
Yeah.
Then I did defence, then midfield and stoppages, and yeah. So no, it it was a good grounding.
How do you know when you're ready to be a senior coach?
I think it's really I think it's a choice. Like you choose if you're ready to put your name out there and you're ready to put yourself on the line. And
yeah.
Because it's easy as an assistant to sit back and go, oh, I'd do this and I'd do that. And I think once you really start, if that's it can be quite flippant. I reckon early days, like you might look at even other coaches and you'll be like, oh, I would have just done that. But I reckon once you start looking at it deeper and analysing why you think that, if that makes sense, like you don't just throw something out there flippantly. It's actually thinking a little bit deeper about it. And I was lucky enough at Sydney that we had a crew that were together for a really long time. So the synergy there was great. And then because of that, there was a lot of autonomy in our jobs, a lot of trust in each other and responsibility handed over, which was good grounding. Like I look at the things I do now, and there's a few things that happen, but the intricacies of it and the emotions attached to it are a little bit different. Yeah. But a lot of the other stuff, I think, has held me in good stead. The exposure I got. Yeah.
I mean, your years at Port Adelaide, your years at Hawthorn, and then Sydney, of course, you've always been in successful cultures and within successful groups and teams. What is it about Sydney in particular that makes them, arguably in terms of finals appearances, one of the most successful teams?
Yeah, I remember there's a few things. So there's stability off field, which, looking at all the big clubs of the last 10, 15 years, really stable off field. Now individuals come and go, but the bulk or weight of numbers are really stable and aligned. And then, I think, particularly Sydney with where they are, being out of Melbourne, I think's a bit of an advantage. So even when they're going really well, there's not this massive bandwagon. And when they're not going that well, it's not doom and gloom. So it's really neutral, I guess, by design, by location. And then the playing group, obviously the framework of their culture was set up around high accountability for the players, which I think was the mechanism of that and how it was passed down from generation to generation. And it's a little bit like, in cricket or when there's a captain and, because it's really stable cricket teams most of the time, but when one or two come in, they really know what to expect and they're shown the way.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I think the Sydney model is high accountability from the players, and the coaches really just support that and facilitate. Yeah. So the player power was something. My first Christmas break, we used to, let's say 21st of December, players break up. Then on the 23rd, 26th, every 3 days we'd say there'd be a coach, a fitness guy and a medical staff member from 8 till 10. If anyone wants to come and do their program with other people, no worries. And I remember I put my name down, I want to make a good impression. I was going to be there, so I put my name down as a development coach. And I rolled up the first day, and Jude Bolton, Ryan O'Keefe and Adam Goods came and they did this session that I was just like, no wonder these blokes are champions of the league right now. And I'm thinking, I hadn't seen that before, from the club I was at.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, here's three blokes who are arguably, probably the most decorated at that time. And I thought, they just went hammer and tong with each other, drove each other. And I remember just looking, going, geez, I was miles off that. No wonder I, we all did our program, but was I meeting up with the most fittest and getting him to help drive? And I wasn't doing that. And then 3 days later, the same three blokes rocked up again with a couple of other boys. But I just thought, that's pretty impressive. Like the attitude around, they're still having their time off. Yeah. But, I think I spoke to Goodsy and said, how do you, balance the mental break? And he said, well, when you think about how many hours in a day, and I just got to come here for a couple of hours and go really hard and get it done and feel good for the rest of the day. So that's how he justified it in his head, whereas, I was always one. I'd have to get up early and get it done. Whereas, some guys would do it at 5, 6 at night. I don't know how they do that. Where they're just hanging over your head all day.
No way.
I was one to get straight up and get out there and do it. But the way in which they went about it, I thought, no wonder these players are the most powerful people at this club, because they were the ones driving the standards.
There's a couple of pretty significant things that happened at Sydney during your time, of course, a premiership, but also recruiting Bud. I mean, you're a premiership teammate with Bud, and good mates, and then he is the big recruit coming to Sydney. Huge news across the country, and now you are one of his coaches. Yeah,
it was funny. Obviously, it needs to be pretty tightly held how that came about. So I still remember Ruffy telling me. He rang me and said, "Oh,
Ruff did."
Yeah, Ruffy rang me and said, "You've got Bud," and I laughed. I just said, "Oh, there's no chance we got Buddy, mate."
I think Miles pretty good.
And he said, "No, you have," and I was like. So I went in the next day. I can't remember what time. It was late in the year, really late. And I sort of said to Horse, I said, I'm hearing, there's a rumour out there about, I didn't put Ruffy under the bus, but I said, there's a rumour out there that we've got Buddy. And Horse goes, how can we get him? And then a week later it happened.
Yeah.
So I went back in, I said, no worries. Thanks for that. And he goes, well, you got to understand that we had to keep it pretty tight. And I said, yeah. I said, well, P.S. Ruffy told me a week ago. So, yeah. But it was, massive news. And I think it was bigger than Buddy even thought, and it took him a while to adjust. Big change for him, but a little bit like it's been really good for him to get out of Melbourne and grow up. Almost, not that I'm comparing myself to Buddy, but it took me to move out of Adelaide, my comfort zone, to really, grow up and not just Hawthorn, but then Sydney.
Yeah.
I think, and obviously Jacinta has been a massive influence on him, and in a positive way, and so he's really happy. But gee, it was interesting early, because it's weird when you got someone you played with. Joey Kennedy was there and Benny McLean.
Yeah.
And you're always wary of getting caught talking to them too much, because you don't want anyone to think you're favouring them, or so. I always think as ex-teammates, you almost distance yourself a little bit, which maybe is not the right call.
Yeah.
Maybe you're over-analysing.
So, effectively, don't take this the wrong way, but effectively you go from chocolates to boiled lollies. You go from one of the strongest cultures within the AFL in Sydney to then taking the reins at from the outside looking in, one of the clubs that have one of the weakest cultures. How do you parlay those learnings into your new job at the Suns?
Yeah, I think it patience is one word, because I think you can't, as you know, like the culture takes time to build, but then it's an everyday thing. So it's not like you all of a sudden you get to a point and go, we've fixed the culture. It's ongoing. You got to look after it. So I certainly think as a club in its infancy. And it's well documented that there's things that could have been done better along the way. So really our mantra at the moment is making sure that we build it right and take our time. Like, to come in 1 month in and say, all right, this is what we're going to do, this and this. You don't really know the place. So I think there's been mistakes in the past where you try and transport what you've seen at a good club and go, right, we're just doing it here. But you've got to know, have you got the right people? Have you got the players? So this 12 months has been about exploring the whole club. So with that staff, it's the admin staff. It's who are we? And I think we're not a big club. We're a community-based club. On the Gold Coast, which is a fantastic community. But I don't think we've connected with them. And when I say we, in previous times, well enough. So we're really working on that, so that if there's a connection there, then they'll come along for the journey rather than it being that shallow one of wins will bring people. I think we can still bring people along whilst we're in our infancy. But I certainly think it's about finding out what you've got first before you make big decisions. Now, injuries this year have probably allowed us to have a real good look at the list. You know, we've had a fair few, so guys have had a lot of opportunities. So at the end of the year, you know, we'll be able to make some informed decisions, and we won't be guessing on some of those. But I think it is about understanding that you've got to make your own identity. So yes, I know, and some other people know that have been at other good clubs, what works, but it's the how you get it done. No clubs are the same. Like Sydney, Port, Hawthorn, all really good cultures, but they've got some variations.
So people say that being a senior coach changes a man. You haven't started going grey yet. You haven't started losing your hair. It seems to be agreeing with you at this early stage. Does it change it?
I'm probably I'm too green, really, I think, to assess that.
What would your wife Sarah say? Would she?
Oh no, I think it's been great actually because you know, it's been a great move for our family, and that was one thing I think. Taking the job, everything had to align. So, you know, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to go with Roosie to Melbourne, and that was, you know, a really, really good opportunity to work with Roosie. And at the time, I think, you know, Sarah had a really good job. Our daughter was really young, you know, so we were first-time parents.
Yep.
So we're still learning about parenting, you know, like, so you jump into that role. If you want that to work, does your parenting suffer? Or if you maintain your parenting, you're giving your role what you need to do. So a lot of things had to align. And the other one with that was I felt like it was a bit like my career, that things happened easily for me. So in a bit of a sick way, I was like, Roosie's given me another opportunity, and it's just like been given to me.
Really?
You know, and I felt like, no, I think I have to reverse this trend in my own head to be able to put in what I need to and learn the most. So that's why when the Gold Coast one come up, I thought this is a really good opportunity, because it's not even blank canvas. Like, I think we have to get through a little bit of stuff from previous to then get to the start line to then start to build. So that's the exciting part. And really, I think, you know, the people that I've noticed at the club are heavily invested in the Gold Coast. So I think that's the recipe there. It's the investment in the place. And obviously players come and go, no doubt, high profile or low profile, but that happens at other clubs as well. It just happens that an expansion club's probably under bigger microscope, given that they're new, and people probably question whether they should be there. But having lived there now for a fair while, it absolutely should be there. Like, the participation rates of AFL footy in a rugby league heartland are really soaring. And I saw it in the back end of my time at Sydney. You know, the big schools have now got AFL. Like, you used to drive around and see no one bouncing a footy down the street, in the parks. This is my time in Sydney. So 2010, probably around 2014, 15, you start to see kids in Guernseys. And you start to see people down the park with a footy, not a rugby ball.
Yep.
Then you start to schools, big rugby schools, are now got AFL because the parents are saying, well, where's AFL for our kids? So I think maybe Queensland's a little bit behind because it's starting to head up the coast. But I certainly see the academy that the Swans have, you know, formed there has a big influence in that. And we need to invest a lot more in our academy. You know, I think the spend of Swans Academy is about 1.4. Currently we're 250, 300,000. So we need to invest in that.
Yep.
And we've obviously got North Queensland as well, which is a little bit untapped. So it's growing. And it's not for now. Like, I think everyone's, again, clubs had to start somewhere. I mean, Hawthorn, how long were they around before they won a flag? You know, and we're not saying we want that to happen, but to establish, the easy thing would be, well, let's not even try. But the growth of population is going to be there, and there's interest. We've got to do things better, absolutely. probably changed my life. You know, that phone call? Like, do I just go and roll around and play at Central Districts and, you know, who knows what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
But I reckon that role and why he got me there probably sparked my interest in coaching.
Yep.
And then from there, it has been life changing. So, is that on my coaching career? It's probably just on my life. Like, that's big, you know, one of the biggest influence. But then, you know, I still think like guys like I mentioned him before, but Jeff Morris was.
Yeah.
I do go back to how he was for me as a coach. That individual care, but also hardness.
Yeah.
You know, like he was hard. He was hard on us.
So how do you straddle that line?
Well, I think if you get to know the player as much as possible, and it's hard because you've got 45, but then, you know, I think Jeff really invested in us. You know, I remember Jeff even in, you know, Christmas break, and, you know, my parents had a holiday place an hour and a half out of Adelaide, so he just rang me one day. He said, "Oh, we might come for a drive. We go for a run." Yeah, he just go for a run, and then he'd get in his car and drive back. I'm thinking, that's 3 or 4 hours out of his day, or like Boxing Day, or so. You try and remind yourself of. You take it for granted at the time, but now as a coach, I'm thinking, how do you find time for all of us doing that? And he wasn't the senior coach; he was development coach. But I sit there and think, you know, and he still rings me now, see how I'm going. He's a legend.
That's cool. I mean, this is 15, 20 years ago, and the kids entering the system now, presumably, are very, very different.
Yeah, it's so individualised now from a young age. You know, I think even, when we played, it was like one size fits all. Like, coach talked to everyone exactly the same, and if you copped it, you copped it. Didn't matter if you're 18 or, you know, I remember even at Centrals, some of the, like Stevie Wright was my coach who used to play for Sydney. You know, he was hard on me, but I reckon it was a good thing, and it actually made you a better player.
Yeah.
Certainly, and it prepared you for playing against men. You know, I think I played league when I was 16, so that was reasonably early. But so I think he's just preparing you for what you're capable of.
Yeah.
But they're certainly different these days. He's so individualised that you've got to treat everyone under the same banner, but differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it seems to change quickly, and the game is always evolving. One aspect of the game that is always changing and is having an impact, particularly at your club, is player movement. Free agency.
It's interesting. Like, even take our club out of it. Is free agency working? It's probably for everyone to sit down and have a look. Is it working? Yes, it's working in terms of player movement.
Yeah.
But is it working in terms of not equalising? Is it fair? Is it fair? I'm not sure. Is it there to equalise I don't think it was brought in to equalise the competition, but I think it's having a bearing on I guess teams being able to jump from the bottom rung to the middle rung to the top rung.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the draft's brought in to equalise the competition, but I'm not sure that in itself isn't enough either. So there's the trade, there's draft, but then the lower teams don't really have that opportunity for free agency.
No, I mean, this aspect of free agency and player movement and restrictions of trade, I guess, is part of the motivation.
Yeah. And I think being a non-Victorian team, you know, even look at Adelaide Footy Club, Tippett, Gunston, Dangerfield, Davis. It's not a bad group of players, and they've survived. They've got greater depth, but also, you know, that. So it's not exclusive to us, but I certainly think the northern markets, not being a footy state, there's a lot more playing Adelaide. So guys might get drafted out of Adelaide, and they may lose guys like Dangerfield, but then they get guys like Gibbs back. So there's a little bit of, you know, 1-1 there. But for Queensland and even New South Wales, it doesn't quite happen that way.
How do you tilt the ledger back in your favour?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I haven't spent a lot of time because this year has been, real, not a steep learning curve, but we've been really engrossed in what we're doing in the short, medium, long term.
Yep.
And whilst this season's going, we're really planning for next. And that never goes away, but I haven't got to the pointy end of that sort of stuff. And even with Tom's situation, it's not like I was sitting there trying to think of different equations because it wasn't going to be relevant for this case.
Yep.
But I do think at the end of the year that we do need to have the discussion around what does it look like, is it going well? And I know, and it probably gets back to why was it brought in? Is it just for player movement and rewarding, I guess, time at club? So, no issue with Tom because he has done 8 years. So he's a restricted free agent and given great service to the club. But yeah, it was when it became public in that we still had games to go. I think that's when it changed.
Yeah.
But we as a club have had players leave after 2 or 3 years. So I think it's almost every player's a free agent now. I'm not sure if maybe that needs tightening.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the issue with the 8 or so years, 7, 8 years, if you've given good service. But the issue when, if I draft Brad Sewell, you put 2 years into you and then you just go, no, I'm going back and I want to go to that club. Well, you're backed into a corner a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes it difficult. It pops into your mind when I say the word Alastair Clarkson.
Loyal.
It was an easy one to start with, wasn't it? Choco Williams?
Yeah. Basics.
Basics?
Yeah. Well, he taught the basics really well. Just with us who were starting our footy journey, he drummed the basics in every day. Yeah. John Carr was my first coach, but Mark Williams really because he was assistant. So back then it was only a couple of coaches, but Mark had us at the club every day with the basics. Yeah.
Warren Treadray?
Oh, underrated. Yeah.
Kane Corns?
Tagger.
Adam Goods?
Champion.
John Longmire?
Very loud. He had
good voice.
When he went, it was so loud.
Yeah.
It's just, you would have heard John Kennedy speak.
Yeah.
And John Longmire was coached by John Kennedy.
Of course.
But I reckon, John Kennedy, I remember that night at Hawthorn, he got up to speak at a function. There was a microphone.
You hear a pin drop.
And he just said, no, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And it just echoed through the room. And I reckon Horse isn't at that level, but he had a commanding voice, yeah.
Stephen May?
He's passionate. Can I use more than one word? Not really.
You have.
I'm breaking the rules.
You have so far. You've always
dribbled.
You've broken the rules throughout your career. Why stop now?
He's passionate.
Yep. Tom Lynch?
Lynchy. I probably feel I would have loved to work with Lynchy more. So I guess unfulfilled's not the word, but our relationship was unfulfilled. Yeah. I would have loved to work with him more. He's a hard worker.
Yeah.
Yeah. He worked really hard and obviously with his knee this year, he put his body on the line.
Yeah.
So
Buddy Franklin?
Freak.
Stevie, when was the last time you cried?
Yeah. You know what? It was the other day, and Mark Evans was actually interviewing me in front of the whole club, and we were talking about something, and I recalled the story about Jared McVeigh and his daughter, and that time at the footy club. We're talking about resilience, and he's one of the most resilient people, and his wife with that time they went through, and as I was saying it, you can feel it coming. And then you try and stop it, and you go to water. Yeah. So that was it in front of the whole club.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. And we'll wrap it up finally with the CEO of the AFL. What would you change about the game, if anything?
CEO. I'd like to tweak with the program, the draw.
Yeah.
You know, like I think for it to be really, I guess, fair and even. Does everyone play everyone once and have a longer final series?
Yeah.
You know, I think we could tweak with that and perhaps shorter games. And I understand that the TV rights, but do we have longer breaks?
Yeah.
Is there more interaction from the clubs in those breaks that fill those breaks so that, you know, if we cut the game by 10, 15 minutes, but is there more interaction with the teams during those breaks?
Yeah.
You know, is there more interviews? Is there better access?
In terms of media access?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel like, gee, the game hasn't been on for 15 minutes at half time or 20 minutes. Is there just greater access?
Yep.
That's probably one thing. And I think we need to give that, which I think we're getting there.
It's moving that way.
It's moving that way. There's still a few. You still, as a senior coach, feel nervous about giving that access. But I reckon if they made a blanket rule where everyone was doing it,
yeah,
you know, because you look at some things, you go, oh, geez, that's putting yourself out there.
You'll have that moment at some stage.
That's right. And then, you know, upcoming, we're going to have, you know, be mic'd up for quarter time, three-quarter time. Like, I'm in my first year. Do I need to be doing that? But I'm like, it's actually not about me.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it doesn't, it doesn't care. I don't care. But I reckon if they had a blanket rule that this is what's accepted and what we do.
Yeah.
As coaches, I think we can, if we all agree on that, I think then it takes away that anxiety.
Last one, being the football journeyman, what's the greatest lesson footy has taught you?
I think that things, I guess the greatest lesson footy's taught me is that things are achievable when you get a group of people that invest so heavily and when I say invest, like really care for each other. I reckon that's when you can achieve something that you never thought possible. That's why, you know, and it's all timing. Like 2008, I reckon we just peaked right at that time and everyone was feeling good. And I think that when you're looking at each other running through the banner and you're thinking, well, we're going to win today.
Yeah.
Like no one else thinks it, but I'm looking at you going, we're actually going to win today.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not I think that feeling is I guess when you reflect is however much you put in, you get out. And that's what I feel like playing-wise I probably didn't put enough in. Now I was lucky enough to get some stuff out, which other people helped clearly. I was in the right place at the right time at times. And then, but as a coach, I'm like, right, putting everything in to try and get as much out. So
there's no doubt all those sessions at Mount Macedon were worthwhile. Stuart Dew, Stevie, thank you very much for the chat.
Thank you, Stevie.